News Machine here. Welcome to Chapter 10, Lesson 2. Today we talk about one of Thomas Jefferson's probably most memorable accomplishments, the Louisiana Purchase. He effectively doubled the size of the United States with a single purchase. You can see it right here. And for the price was right. It was a pretty sweet deal, even though we don't get to the numbers. I think it ended up being like 3 cents an acre, which is great. Also, in today's lesson, we have a duel. Very exciting. Bang, bang. Good times. Alright, so, here we go. By 1800, Americans were moving west. They would pack their stuff up in their family wagon, and with their rifle and axe, forge westward to start a new life in the wilderness. Now at the time, about as far as they could go was the Mississippi River. Farmers would shop by the Mississippi, often on a tributary river of the Mississippi that fed into it, and then they would grow their goods, their crops, and they would be shipped down the Mississippi into Spanish territory, to Spanish New Orleans, where these goods were allowed by the Spanish to be packed up and shipped back up to the east coast of the United States. Now, here's what happens. 1802 rolls by, and quite suddenly it appeared Spain would no longer allow American goods to ship out of New Orleans. And they're going, what the heck? We've been doing this for years. What's going on? Thomas Jefferson learns that there is a secret sort of backdoor deal between Spain and France, whereas Spain is going to transfer ownership of New Orleans and the territory, and perhaps even parts of Florida, over to France. And this is really bad because, well, the guy who's in charge of France at the time is Napoleon Bonaparte. He has been referred to as one of the Antichrists, mostly by the Roman Catholic Church. Either way, he's an empire builder. He is not the kind of guy you want in your doorstep. It was well known that he wanted to forge an empire, this is to say Napoleon, not only in Europe, but in the Americas. Thomas Jefferson doesn't want this. He wants all this land. He wants it to belong to the United States, not Napoleon. So here's what happens. Jefferson immediately sends diplomats like Robert Livingston over to France to negotiate for the purchase of New Orleans. This would sort of secure the Mississippi River and the shipping for all these farmers out west. Congress authorizes Livingston to pay up to $2 million for New Orleans. I think he wanted to buy West Florida as well. Yes, that's what it says there. Now, Napoleon had this grand plan for this American empire. His clutch nation was what turns into Haiti, Santo Domingo Island in the Caribbean. He was going to run his empire from here. It was going to be like his naval base, his sort of central command. The problem with empire building and indeed life is it does not have much regard for your plans. So Santo Domingo, as it was called at the time, in part inspired by the French Revolution, had its own revolution. Alright, I gotta say this guy's name right. Toussaint Louverture, that's it. Toussaint Louverture basically led the slaves and the laborers, I believe he was a slave himself, in a revolt against the plantation's owners of the island. And they basically overthrew the plantation owners and formed their own government. Napoleon actually sent troops to take the island back, but to no avail. By 1804, the French were driven totally out of Santo Domingo, and it took back its old name, Haiti. So, without Haiti, aka Santo Domingo, Napoleon's plans for his American empire pretty much disappeared. Like I said, it was clutch for him. He also needed money at this point for his continuing war with Britain. So he offered to Robert Livingston to sell him the entire Louisiana territory, including New Orleans, for $15 million. Livingston wasn't technically authorized to make the deal. He was authorized to buy New Orleans for $2 million, but he accepted these terms and brought them back to the United States anyways, because it was such a great deal. It's like, you were going to buy just this for $2 million, or you can have all of this for $15. So He took this back to the United States. Jefferson wasn't exactly sure if he had the power to authorize this. Remember, he was a limited government type, and there's nothing in the Constitution, and he was a strict constitutionalist, saying that presidents had the power to purchase or acquire land. So he knew there wasn't time to make an amendment to the Constitution. So he said, you know what, we'll just call this a treaty, because according to the Constitution, the president is authorized to make treaties. And then treaties, of course, have to be approved by the Senate. So he approved the purchase as a treaty, and then it was approved by the Senate as a treaty, and the Louisiana Purchase was completed. Yeah, a real sweet deal. Now, this is a rather large territory, as you can see in the map, that had been acquired, and we needed to know what the heck was there. So, Thomas Jefferson sends the expedition of Meriwether Lewis and Lewis's buddy William Clark, and they do an expedition. You can see it here. Honestly, we could do a whole lesson just on Lewis and Clark. Indeed, I put this awesome link here that is like a step-by-step of the whole Lewis and Clark expedition, if you want to learn more details. The trip took 2 years. People had thought they were dead. They'd given them up for dead. And it wasn't just Lewis and Clark. They had like an entourage, including Sacagawea. People argue about how to say it. Sacagawea. She was the native lady. Very popular. Was able to help them talk with all the Native Americans they ran into. Not all of them, but it was a good start. Fascinating stories. We just don't have time for it right now. They did make it back. Everyone thought they had died. It was a pretty big deal when they made it. They brought back with them a plethora of knowledge, and this really encouraged people like, oh, hey, I guess there is stuff over there. We could survive out there. And as a result, people started moving into the Louisiana Territory. There's also another explorer who was somewhat marginalized compared to Lewis and Clark, but so far he's been in every history book, but there's only like a paragraph on him. His name is Zebulon Pike. He basically went on a excursion just like Lewis and Clark, but he headed more southward. You can see his trip here. He hit Colorado, down into what would become New Mexico. They accidentally skirt into Spanish territory like Mexico and parts of Texas. They actually get captured at one point, but released because Spain and the United States aren't at war. Regardless, Spain did hold a couple Americans from Zebulon Pike's expedition for years. Jerk move, Spain. Of note, Zebulon Pike discovered a mountain in Colorado, a snow-capped mountain. It's now called Pikes Peak because the name was Zebulon Pike. Zebulon's a cool name. Save that for a pet or child. So, we finish off with Federalists having a hissy fit, and then there's a duel. Federalists were not happy about the Louisiana Purchase. They thought that the addition of this new territory, remember it doubled the size of the states, and the states that these territories would become once populated would break the power of Federalist New England in the federal government. You think about it. If you have a majority of population and seats in the House of Representatives, but then a whole bunch of new territories get added, you know, they're probably not going to, you don't know if they're going to be Federalists or not, so they think that this is going to make them lose power. So they were super poopy pants about it, and they made this plan for the New England states to secede or leave the Union over this. They were going to form their own confederacy, but they knew if they were going to succeed, they would have to have New York come, because it was a very populous state. Who did they turn to? They needed an ally in New York. They turned to Aaron Burr, who is the current vice president, as well as a Democratic Republican, but also a New Yorker. Burr had actually just lost an election to become the governor of New York. He had run, his vice presidential term was about over, and he lost. He blamed a smear campaign, led in part by Alexander Hamilton, his nemesis. Hamilton heard that Burr might be part of this New England secession movement, and Hamilton was not a big fan of this secession movement. Basically, they hated each other, and this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. They didn't like each other for a number of reasons. They blamed each other for each other's misfortunes and problems. And it all culminated in a duel, an illegal but common practice among the upper class folk of colonial America. Burr shot Hamilton above the hip, and Hamilton died the very next day. Now, it is said in your book that Hamilton was a great gentleman and pledged not to fire his weapon. And there is some evidence in letters that asserts that he had planned not to shoot Aaron Burr. However, witnesses at the event say that Hamilton did indeed fire and missed. So the real question that no one will ever know really is, did Hamilton fire and miss on purpose, or did he fire and just accidentally miss? Much like the debate about Concorde and the Revolution and the shot heard around the world, I'm afraid we'll never really know for sure unless you can resurrect Zombie Hamilton. But regardless, there's a lot more information on it, and I embedded this awesome video about the duel. But this poppycock in your textbook is a sugar-coated version. Hamilton wasn't a great gentleman that agreed to a duel and then just stood there and got shot, like is kind of suggested in your book. Oh, he fired his weapon. We just don't know if he missed on purpose or not. So yeah, there you have it. That's our lesson for the day. Oh, I didn't make the assignment yet, but it won't be anything too crazy. Go ahead and move on to the assignment. If you need any help, as always, let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Check out that link for Lewis and Clark, and check out this cool video about Hamilton and Burr. It's only 90 seconds. All right, talk to you later.